All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, I'm going to be dealing with... There's a brand new book came out. It's called Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos. If you haven't seen it yet, I put up a review, an in-depth review of it yesterday. Check it out. Overall, I like the book. I think it's really, really good. However, the character options have upset me for two reasons. One, if you've been watching my Daily December, you know I did a video about drama that the book caused because someone had already banned one of the spells before the book was published because it's such an unbalancing spell. It's not. It's real. It's the one thing, and I actually now that I've actually read the spell, again, there's not a problem with it. It's a pretty straightforward spell. And my suggestion that it should be a second level spell and not a first is actually supported by the book. Because of the 5 spells, there's a spell for every college. Of the 5 spells that are introduced, 4 of them are second level spells. The only one that isn't is Silvery Barbs, which is a first level spell. It should be a second level spell. That is the only change it needs, is it should be a second level spell, just like every other spell. So, that being said, sorry, I am like really having a hard time speaking right now. Okay, so, that being said, I'm not going to talk about spells in this one. I want to talk about the new backgrounds and the new feats. And the reason I'm going to cover both of these in this same video is they are the same. The new backgrounds are the feats. And they're all the same with some minor cosmetic changes. And the new feats are all the same, some minor cosmetic changes. And they 100%, like if you want to ban something from this book, ban those. They're actually broken. They actually create problems with this that nothing else does. Like, oh dear Lord. Okay, so I have no idea why we were arguing about a stupid spell that really doesn't do much when we should have been arguing about the backgrounds and feats. So anyway, that's what we're covering today. Let's dive into it. First, a primer on backgrounds. Or not backgrounds, on feats. Feats have existed in D&D since 3rd edition. I believe 3rd edition is where they first showed up. And basically what a feat is, when they're first introduced, is they were little kind of piecemeal things that could help you customize your character. You would take a feat and, this feat would give you the ability that if you killed something, you could make another attack as part of that same action. But you could only do it once. That was called cleave. And then... eventually you would be able to get improved cleave, and a lot of feats kind of built upon each other. But because of how 3rd edition was built, the feats were kind of a mess because there were literally hundreds of them. Then we get to 4th edition, and feats are relatively similar, and you get them in a similar manner. In 3rd edition, you got a feat every other level unless you were a fighter, where you got a feat every other level, and then you also got bonus fighter for the feats. That was one of the things about being a fighter, is they got extra feats. Go to 4th edition, you again got them every other level, but every single class had their own selection of feats. Every race had their own selection of feats. There were general feats, there were multi-classing feats. It became even more complex as they tried to use feats as a way to customize your character. And again, I really like 4th edition. I think it got a really bad rep. I think it's a super, super fun edition. But the feats are a mess, and I can admit that. When we moved to 5th edition, the first thing that happened in 5th edition is instead of getting feats every other level, you only get feats roughly every 4 levels. And when they were interviewed about feats specifically, they and feats are optional. In 4th and 3rd edition, they were required. They were part of leveling up. You could not play a game without feats. The game wouldn't work. 5th edition, they are optional. You actually don't have to use the feats rules at all. And you only get one every 4-ish levels, unless you're a fighter. Fighters still get more for the feats. And when they were asked about them, they specifically said, we want feats to feel special. In earlier editions, like one of the feats you could get was dual wielding, which just meant that normally if you tried to dual wield something, your main hand attacks would have a -4 to their attack rolls, and your offhand attacks would have a -8. And if you took the dual wielder feat, it would just reduce those by 2. Which really wasn't fun. Like the feats did such a tiny amount of anything that they really just, until you got 3 or 4 of them, they really didn't do much. Like a single feat on his own didn't change much of anything. They wanted to change that. So in 5th edition, feats are big deals. A feat is designed to massively change how you play your character. That is what they are designed to do. And every single one of them does something pretty significant. There are very few feats that simply give you like proficiency in something. Like in 3rd edition, there were proficiency feats. If you wanted to use a specific kind of weapon that your class normally couldn't, or there were certain weapons that there were no classes that ever got proficiency in them. So you had to use a feat to use those particular weapons. So you would take a feat to get proficiency in a single weapon, and then you could get training or specialization. I can't remember what it's called in 3rd edition, which would give you a +1 to the attack roll. It was just really boring and not fun. You never felt really powerful picking a feat. 5th edition, you do. The dual wielder feat in 5th edition does a bunch of different things. First, it allows you to dual wield items that don't have the light property. That significantly expands what you can dual wield. Second, it allows you to draw 2 weapons when you normally would only be able to draw 1. That's one thing that a lot of people either are unaware of or just simply ignore because it's a little bit more complicated, is the act of drawing a weapon according to the rules in 5th edition. As part of your attack action, you can draw a single weapon. Meaning, first round of combat, if you're a dual wielder and you don't have the dual wielding feat, you cannot draw your second weapon. But because you don't have enough actions, you would have to use an action to draw it. And there's a bunch of different ways to get around that and that. But the dual wielder feat, that was one of the things that it did. So it would allow you to draw 2 weapons simultaneously. It would allow you to wield dual wield weapons that didn't have the light property. They still couldn't be 2-handed weapons. You still needed to be 1-handed weapons. And it also, whenever you had both of your weapons out, you had an increase of your AC by 1. Which again, we've talked about in 5th edition, a single point in AC actually is a pretty significant jump because the range of ACs is smaller than, I believe, almost any other D&D game, other than maybe like 2nd edition, because you would start out at generally 10, and you generally could get down to like -2 or -4, tended to be where you started to max out. But I believe you could go further. Thaco, super fun. Yeah, like that is a single feat, whereas in 3rd or 4th edition, that would be like 3 or 4, sometimes 5 different feats in order to get the same effect. So the entire purpose of feats is they're designed to be character changing. They're designed to make you play your character very, very differently. So why am I talking about feats when we're going to talk about the backgrounds? Well, that's what the backgrounds are. I did an entire series on backgrounds. Let's shift over to the backgrounds. I did an entire series in D&D Deep Dive on backgrounds and how you can use your backgrounds in the game. Because a lot of people, when they choose their background, they forget about it after character creation. And every background has this thing called a background feature. And a lot of them are really, really useful. And so I went through the entire player's handbook and showed how each one of these background things can be useful. But they're role-playing uses. They can have mechanical benefits, but for the most part, they're role-playing uses. In Strixhaven, there are 5 new backgrounds. They are Lorehold student, Prismari student, Quandrix student, Silverquill student, and Witherbloom student. Basically, each school has their own background. So if you're playing in a Strixhaven campaign, it actually would kind of make sense to choose that background. Despite and this is the other thing that gets me a little bit annoyed. In the Strixhaven game, your first year, or in the campaign, your first year, you don't have a house. So your background, and it's another thing that they just don't seem to understand about these backgrounds. Your background is what you did before becoming an adventurer. That's why you can have a pirate background and now you're an adventurer, or an acolyte background and now you're doing things, or a chef background and now you're adventuring. You had a life before you started adventuring. The Strixhaven backgrounds are backgrounds that you can't even have if you're starting a Strixhaven campaign, because your first year you don't choose which school you're going to be in, and they do kind of make it up for that. For like here, to give you an example, the Lorehold student says, you have spent your youth preparing to be a student of Lorehold College, reading every book on the college's recommended reading list for prospective students. Your academic passions are in the broad field of history. You might dream of using magic to contact great historical figures or your own ancestors, or of recreating the mighty magic of a distant age. So it does kind of go, okay, you're Hermione, effectively. Every one of these backgrounds is before going to school, and your first year is designed to let you try a little bit of everything so that you can make an informed decision. You, on the other hand, made your decision before you even got to school. Before you could really make decisions, you've already decided this is what you're going to be. Okay, fine. It still is a weird background, that this is a background that you are choosing your future of the class using your background. That's what you... Okay, no, that's perfectly fine. All right, so let's get over that. This is how every single one of the backgrounds, because the backgrounds are almost identical. Every single one of them works the exact same way. You get 2 skill proficiencies. That's a normal thing for backgrounds. You choose 1 or 2 languages. Lorehold gets 2 languages. Every other one gets 1 language. You get school supplies. Bottle of black ink, ink pen, hammer, hooded lantern, tinderbox, something to do with your school. Like for Lorehold students, it's a tome of history. For Prismari students, it's an instrument. A school uniform, and then some money. Different ones will have different amounts. Like Lorehold has 15 gold, which I find hard to believe because I know how much textbooks cost. And the fact that the Lorehold student, which are going to have more textbooks than any other student, actually have more gold than any other student, I find that suspect. I do not find it suspect at all, however, that the Prismari students, Lorehold students get 15 gold, Prismari students only get 10 because they have an instrument. Instruments are really freaking expensive. The rest of them are 15 gold apiece. So the only people that get less money are the Prismari students, which is sad. But it's super true. Again, I minored in music. Music majors and music minors are poor as shit. Because they have to spend all of their money on their, especially instrumental majors. They have to spend all of their money on their instrument. Like for woodwinds, we had reeds we had to buy. Your instrument, any instrument requires maintenance. Woodwind instruments, there's just a lot of shit that can go wrong with a woodwind instrument, and your pads if you don't take care of your instrument, your pads can rot out and you have to get them replaced, and the corking will eventually need to be replaced. Like brass instruments, you can all the stuff just kind of fits together, and the most you need to get is like some slide grease and stuff like that, and slide oil and things like that. And if a slide does get damaged or something, that is not fun to replace it. But on woodwind instruments, your cork needs to be replaced a lot quicker than a slide will ever need to be replaced. Another thing, so wow, something went down the wrong tube. So anyway, that's what you get for each background until the feature. The feature, Lorehold Initiate. You gain the Strixhaven Initiate feats presented later in this chapter and must choose Lorehold within it. In addition, if you have the Spellcaster or Pact Magic feature, the spells of the Lorehold Spells table are added to the spell list of your spellcasting class. If you are a multi-classed character with multiple spell lists, these spells are added to all of them. So let's review. Feats are designed to massively change your character. One of the really only benefits of choosing a human is the variant human gets a feat. That's a really big deal. It's one of the reasons why when I used to do play your faves, I would choose humans a lot because that extra feat really, really helped if you were making really interesting builds. With this, and when Tasha's came out, if you want to create your own race, one of the ways that you can create your race is by giving them an inherent feat. Which makes sense because, again, the racial traits of most races do give you about the equivalent of a feat. So that makes perfect sense. However, a human Lorehold student gets to start with 2 feats. And I guess I wouldn't be quite as upset about it if it wasn't for the fact that the Strixhaven Initiate feat is an upgraded version of one of the most useful feats in the entire game. Well, what is the Strixhaven Initiate feat? Well, let me tell you. Choose one of Strixhaven's college. Those. You learn 2 cantrips and 1 first level spell based on the college you choose as specified in the table. You can cast a chosen first level spell without a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can cast this in this way again. You can also cast a spell using any spell slots you have. Your spellcasting ability for this feat's spells is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, chosen when you select this feat. You know why that sounds familiar? Because that's the Magic Initiate feat with extra stuff! The Magic Initiate feat, one of the limitations that I wasn't even aware of until years after I'd started playing 5th edition, is if you use Magic Initiate to get a spell, you can only cast that spell using the 1 slot that you get from the feat. If you are a spellcaster, you cannot cast that spell using your spell slots. It doesn't work that way. Strixhaven Initiate does. Now, there is some slight limitations on this because the cantrips you can choose are limited. For Lorehold, you choose 2 from the following 3. Light, Sacred Flame, Thaumaturgy. And that's generally how it works, is they will give you 3 cantrips. You have to choose 2 of them. Then for your first level spell, depending on the school that you choose, you get to choose it from specific spell lists. So for the Lorehold, it has to be a cleric or wizard spell. For Prismari, it has to be a bard or a sorcerer spell. For Quandrix, it's druid or wizard. Silvercore, it's bard or cleric. Witherbloom, it's druid or wizard. So first things first, for Lorehold, wizards get access to just about every arcane spell in the game. They have access to more spells than any other on their spell list than any other class. A cleric gets access to almost every divine spell in the game. So Lorehold is literally pick a spell. There are so few spells you cannot choose. First level spells, obviously. Between the wizard and cleric list, and you can cast all of them using intelligence, using charisma, whatever you want. One of the limitations of the Magic Initiate feat was when you chose it, you chose your spellcasting modifier based on which spell list you chose, and you only got to choose from a single spell list. This doesn't do that. You just have access to a first level spell. Now, first level spell is not massively game breaking. But when you combine this with the fact that you can cast that spell using a different modifier than anyone else has to use for that spell, you can create some massively broken combos. And this is a first level feat. You get this when you choose any one of the Strixhaven backgrounds. So yeah, I have a problem with a background giving you access to not only a feat, but a really, really useful feat. There's a reason I used Magic Initiates a lot in Play Your Faves. It's really easy to be able to just really modify a class to make it play very, very differently. And just, I don't understand who thought this was a good idea. Especially since, again, like, when I do D&D deep dives, and I mentioned this in my last one about the Black Mage, I guess you could say I got a little bit heated about it. I don't think I got, like, mad or anything like that. But I do get annoyed when people try to reinvent the wheel when it already exists. But I do my best to go, hey, let's be constructive about this. This person's working really, really hard. Wizards of the Coast doesn't get that. Again, they have playtesters. I know some of their playtesters. I don't know how the playtesters did not flag this massively. Wizards doesn't get that. They did something massively stupid here. This is unbelievably stupid, and I'm allowed to be angry about it because it's stupid. It's stupid, it's stupid, it's stupid. Why give a background that gives you a feat? Again, the entire purpose of feats in 5th edition. Wow, now my brain is gone. The entire purpose of feats in 5th edition is to massively change how you play your character. That's what they're supposed to do. So why is your background, no other background in the entire game massively changes how you play your character, except for the Strixhaven backgrounds, because then you just get a free feat. And if you're a human, or you choose you choose to create your own race, you get 2 feats right from the beginning. Obviously, one of them you don't get to choose, but it's a massively useful feat. I have to really quickly to check something because I can't remember. There is a specific spell that I need to know if it's on a list. I can just do this easier and just go hex. Spells. Come on. I just want to know. This is not that hard, computer. I have a massively fast internet connection. Should be this hard. Okay. Okay, so that's the only saving grace is you don't get access to hex because none of these let you choose off of the Warlock spell list. So another slight saving grace. And they don't give access to any of the Bladesinger cantrips, which could become very, very massively broken very quickly. So, is it as broken as it could be? No, it could be a lot worse. Is it still broken? Fuck yes! Again, no background should be giving you access to a feat. No! This is where I put my foot down going, no. That's not how the backgrounds are supposed to work. Backgrounds are supposed to be, this is what I did before becoming an adventurer, and they give you a minor role-playing boost. Not, hey, here, we're going to give you a free feat that gives you access to literally any first-level spell you want, aside from Warlock spells. Like, I mean, it's just, it pisses me off so much. Especially, again, one of the reasons I'm so upset about this is because Thinking DM made this huge deal about Silvery Barbs, which is literally right after the feats is the spell section. And made this huge deal. It's, oh, I'm banning this spell. Ban the freaking feats. Ban the backgrounds. The feats in by themselves aren't that bad if you treated them as a feat. Ban the freaking backgrounds. Ignore the feat, or ignore the spell. The spell is pointless. Oh, it pisses me off that this is the way it does that. Again, there are so many broken combos. Again, giving a first level character access to 2 feats, one of which gives you access to almost any first level spell and a bunch of cantrips. It's asking, like, this is a min-maxer's wet dream. And I don't know why in the world anyone would ever do this. Like, make a warlock that has a Strixhaven background, and you have some really nasty stuff. Because they get to cast any spell they want as a charisma basis spell, using their warlocks as spell slots to basically upcast every single spell. And they can do it as many times as they want. And then they also get access to cantrips that they normally couldn't have. Though, to be perfectly honest, for the warlock, Eldritch Blast is really, really hard to ignore. It's just, I cannot stand this. And then the other feat requires you to take the first feat. It's called Strixhaven Mascot, where you actually get to use the Find Familiar spell to get one of the mascot creatures as your familiar, which has its own issues because they're actual monsters, they're not familiars. And so it just, oh god, like this whole book is just, the book itself is really awesome. I like the book, but these feats are just so broken, and I don't understand why anyone would make a big deal about silvery barbs when you have backgrounds that are giving out feats. In my review, I mentioned I would lose everything in the character options section. I would lose everything in there to make it so that these feats or these backgrounds didn't exist. Like, that is how against them I am. I cannot understand why they would do this, especially since I like backgrounds. I think backgrounds are one of the cooler parts of 5th edition. They existed in 4th edition as well, and they were optional there. And I really think it was a disservice to 4th edition because backgrounds just provided so much more to your character and could be really, really fun to use. But they were optional. They're required in 5th edition, and I like that. And especially with these different colleges, again, I don't understand. I mean, I get the idea that they wanted to tie it to Strixhaven, and so tying each one to one of the schools makes sense. But they call it Witherbloom Student, not Witherbloom. Like, I would feel better if it said Witherbloom Hopeful, as opposed to Witherbloom Student, because this implies that you're already a student in a college that you can't enter for 3 levels. You are not allowed to choose your college until the end of your first year, and by the time you get to the end of your first year, you are 3rd level. So, just, this... I have run out of words to explain exactly how upset I am about this, because there could have been really interesting things, like, the 5 different schools, there are a lot of really interesting aspects to these schools. And the features could have been something much more interesting that would have given you new ways to play the characters, given you new ways to deal with things outside of combat. Like, for a Prismari student. Again, the Prismari students are the art kids, all right? They're visual, basically all of the arts. In my old high school, we actually, the high school was basically, had 4 wings. You had north, south, east, west. One of the wings, I can't even remember which direction it was, because directions are hard. But one of the wings was just called the music wing, because that's where all the music classes were. And then another wing was just the art wing, because that's where all the visual art classes were. And I never, my entire 4 years in that college, or that high school, I never went down the art wing because I never took an art course. However, I lived in the music wing, and I knew a ton of students that never went down either one of those wings because they just weren't involved in those. They spent all of their time in the regular wing with all the, regular classes in it. And then the last wing was the gym, which everyone had to deal with. I was so happy when when gym was no longer a required course for me, because I just hated gym so much. Yeah, and I was in marching band. That should have been enough. So anyway, yeah, I mean, like for the Prismari students, your feature could have been the ability to connect with people through music. Like, once a day, you can be randomly humming a song and someone else can go, oh my God, I recognize that. Or like there's so much you can do with, again, music is my background, so I'm going to be clinging to that a little bit. Or you can, form a bond with someone simply because you both have similar taste in music. Or you can, I had an entire independent study I did where the thesis of the independent study is that you can learn about the culture of a society. You can actually learn about an entire society simply by looking at and learning about their music. And I aced it. I did really, really well in that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so much potential that this could have been something good, and they're just like, no, we're gonna give them a feat. Well, we don't care that feats are supposed to be these things that massively change the game. We're gonna massively change the game at level 1. Yay! It pisses me off so much. So, those of you wondering if I would allow any of these backgrounds at my table, no, not at all. I am going to pull a thinking DM, and I'm going to say I ban all of the Strixhaven backgrounds as they are written. I would go as far as if I was to play, if I were to run the Strixhaven campaign, which I think the Strixhaven campaign is super cool, I would rewrite the feature and give each one their own actual feature instead of, hey, here's a free feat, go nuts. Yeah, like this seems like such a mistake. Especially since when they were first talking about Strixhaven way back in, I think, February, when they put out the stuff, they had subclasses that didn't have a class, which I thought was going to be really, really interesting. And what it turned into was 5 spells and backgrounds that give you feats. That is such a downgrade, in my opinion, because backgrounds that could apply to multiple classes sounds amazing. It's something that doesn't exist in 5th edition already. It could have been something amazing, and people pushed back against it. So they went, okay, if you don't like this, which could possibly break the game, we're going to just actually break the game. There, this is what you get for not liking what we do. Like, this almost feels like a punishment. Fine, you don't want us to do this really cool thing. Fine, we don't give a fuck about the backgrounds in here. We're just gonna give you a free feat. I am irrationally upset about this, and by irrationally I mean I should not be upset about this as I am, but I am. So anyway, final thoughts. Fuck this shit. That is my final thoughts, and you can quote me on that. Wizards of the Coast, if anyone is watching, shame on you. Shame on you. Errata the fuck out of this shit now. Go back to the drawing board. Write a feature for each one of these classes that isn't, here's a free feat. Go nuts. This is such lazy writing. I've never been so insulted by a book in my life. And the rest of this book is freaking awesome. I love the new systems that you added, but this just feels like, oh shit, we need to get to the get my free feats. Like, fuck you, take it out of the book. There's so many better things you could have done than giving out free feats. Fuck you. Anyway, that's all for me today. As a reminder, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. In the comments down below, just say, fuck you, wizards. Or, fuck the backgrounds, whatever you want. Just, I'm really upset about this, guys. Again, my biggest issue with this is I spent so much time arguing with people online, and people that just wouldn't give up that Silvery Barbs is a broken spell. It's not. It just needs to be a second level spell. It's the only change I'd make. Everyone is freaking out about that, and then they had this just in plain sight, big as a friggin' billboard, and like, no, that's fine. We're gonna argue about something that's really stupid. Ugh. It's all for me today. See you guys next time. All right. Bye-bye.